Jake's Takes and Minnesota Tim are back on this podcast. And Jake, it's always a privilege to have you back on, because the back and forth, it's way more fun, way more just light and carefree than doing one of these by yourselves. So, Jacob, talk to me. Give me something good. What's good?
Life is good, Life is good.
Yeah.
I got a question for you right off the bat.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to switch to holding the microphone? I saw a few comments. I think it was on your Dalton Reisner, because your Dalton Reisner pod got some steam in the social media world, and I saw multiple comments like, Minnesota Tim, why are you holding the microphone?
Really? I haven't even seen that. There's comments about people
asking me. Really? I saw it somewhere, or I don't remember, or heard. I don't remember. I engaged with that content at one point. I mean, that's a good question. Why did he switch to holding the microphone?
Oh, that's a good question. And I have an answer for you. I have multiple answers for you for that question.
Okay.
One, I like to move back and forth.
Yep.
So the microphone that was stand still.
Limiting.
Is very limiting. You got to lean forward. You got to lean back. Sometimes, you got to contort your body. It's not good for my posture. So it's just not as comfortable. It's not as casual.
Okay.
One of these, I can just sit back and relax and look at the camera, talk into it however I want to talk into it. Plus, probably the biggest reason why is I invested in a Rodecaster Pro Duo. So there are these things called Rodecaster Pros, which are like $500. There's the Rodecaster Pro 2 that's like $700. And then there's the Rodecaster Pro Duo, which is the exact same thing as those two things, but it's just on a smaller scale, which my past microphones did not suit the Rodecaster Pro Duo. Now, the fortunate part for me is I've had this microphone for multiple years, so I didn't have to buy anything to complement what I already bought, which I already knew. So I went ahead and bought this thing, which allows certain things like, I can easily do that, or I can hit this one. Yeah, one of my favorite ones. So the Rodecaster Pro Duo allows a lot of creativity, and it's just a lot of fun that way.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Now, follow-up question. Do I have any sound bites on your button bar?
Well, honestly, the button bar is still in flux. I've got multiple Kevin Harlan drops, and I'm still figuring out which ones I'm using most consistently.
Yep.
The one I'm using most consistently is this one. And then the one that I also use is this one. And I also use the Jim Mora. Are you kidding me? But then there's a couple of buttons on here that I don't really use that I have available to me. So I need to find some better ones so that I can incorporate them more easily into the studio sounding thing.
Maybe next week or some other week or whenever we reconvene, we can, or maybe this would be good for what we could maybe have either a poll or a little tournament where we can brainstorm like our top 8, top 16. We could each bring some to the table. What are the most iconic button bar lines? And figure out which ones need to be on Minnesota Tim's button bar. Because immediately my first thought, number 1 seed would have to be with no regard for human life.
Oh, wrong one.
With no regard for human life.
Yeah, that one's on here.
That's iconic.
Yep. I just don't use it often enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be when you have a really good burn on something or someone or, And
it's
when you're on a pod by yourself, you're not burning yourself very often, I don't think. So.
Right. Exactly. So, when I rip a Minnesota Vikings player or in a podcast where we're back and forth, and I also got
and he drops the
sledgehammer one.
Up high, down.
So the Kevin Harlan is just filling the entire button bar. But I'm looking for more other ones that are a little bit different so that I can explore different avenues. And I got a lot of buttons. I got a lot of buttons that I can change and keep these still and look at something different.
Maybe next week I'll give you maybe every time we'll convene, I'll have some sort of like top 3 list for you of some sort, and maybe I can come up with top 3 or top 5 button bars that Minnesota Tim should add.
Oh,
I'll make that my assignment.
I accomplished a lifelong goal of mine, which has been a fear of mine for a long time.
A 300 in bowling.
Well, I did accomplish over a 200 in bowling, which was a long road.
Yep.
I even lied about it once, but I was tired of paying so much money for it. And then I finally accomplished it like 3 months ago. But anyways, now that that's off my chest, I've finally rode the Wild Thing for the first time in my life.
With no regard for human life.
It finally happened. I hesitated every time I've been to Valley Fair. And you know what? Compared to roller coasters in Florida and California and the Midwest somewhere, I think there's a place where roller coasters are. It's not even comparable, right? I mean, the Wild Thing is nothing compared to what they have available at some of these massive amusement parks.
I don't know if I'd say nothing, but yeah, it's on the lower tier of those. Like, there's some pretty large roller coasters that exist, like Six Flags, and there's one in Ohio.
Six Flags, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
So there's a couple of monsters that exist in the U.S., yes.
But I don't care because I've never been there. I've never been to Six Flags. My mental monument that I needed to hurdle over was the Wild Thing. And I finally did it last Tuesday. And
you're alive, so that's step 1. You're here.
What's that?
You're alive.
I'm here. I'm alive. There's a couple of fears that I have. One, I'm scared of heights.
Yeah.
And this might be somewhat controversial, but on the Wild Thing, on any roller coaster for that matter, I'm not scared going down. Like, the downward incline is actually fun.
Right. It's the
what scares me the most is the incline, the anticipation. Just like, okay, just get me to the top and drop me down. That's fine. I just don't like the climb up.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the climb up.
Yep. Yeah. Because you just sit and think about it the whole way up. So it's just, yeah. So did you enjoy it? Did you have fun?
I did enjoy it. I would go on it again.
That's good.
Yeah.
Do you ride other roller coasters and it was just the Wild Thing, or are you just not a roller coaster fan kind of in general?
We went on Corkscrew 3 times.
That's a neck rattler. It's been a while since I've been there, but I feel like I always remember my neck just like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, it contorts.
Yeah.
It contorts. Yep. Corkscrew 3 times, Renegade twice.
Yeah, that one's fun.
Yeah, that one's fast. I think that's the best roller coaster there. Yep. And then Excalibur, twice as well. Some of those are almost as high as the Wild Thing, but the Wild Thing just goes that extra step.
Are you a Steel Venom guy?
No. That's the next hurdle.
That one's not that bad either, because the way you're strapped in, you don't really, and you start on the ground, and it just shoots you right. It doesn't have that same feeling as the Wild Thing.
Really? Oh man, I look at it and it looks scary to me because like you're straight up vertically.
Yeah.
And my question to the people that went on it is: would you rather be face down, looking at the ground vertically, or would you rather be looking up, face up vertically?
Yeah.
Like, would you rather be looking at the sky or looking at the ground? Yeah. Which one's worse?
Probably the ground, I guess, because then you kind of have a better concept of what is happening. Because when you look at the sky, you just kind of, I don't know, you don't really, realize what's happening. I mean, you realize, but it's just so different. Yeah, that was a good moment for that. I didn't know how to pay attention.
Normally, I use that one on myself because lots of times I can't spit out sentences.
Yeah.
But,
what about the last one, Power Tower?
Oh, yeah. That's another one I'm not going on.
Yeah, I went on it one time, and it was... I mean, if you hate the anticipation part, the entire run is the anticipation.
Right, that's the entire thing. I just can't do it. I remember way back in the day, in like 5th or 6th grade, I went on like the miniature Power Tower at the county fair.
Sure.
And I'm like, are we at the top yet? Are we at the top yet? Are we at the top yet? It's like, oh my gosh.
It's like 20 feet up in the air.
Right, yeah, it's barely rises above the ground. And Oh, the anticipation just gets me every single time.
Yeah, that one. That one was a lot. I've only been on that one
Mm-hmm.
time. I don't know if I could do rides anymore as an adult. I haven't done it since like college.
Roller coasters aren't bad. I can't do rides as an adult either, but for whatever reason, roller coasters don't mess with my mind as much as like the spinny rides, like the Scrambler,
Instant
or like
vertigo,
the Octopus. Yeah, the zipper. Right. I don't think I can handle the zipper anymore.
No, gosh, no. Yeah.
That's a ride, man.
Yeah. I remember you, me, and Tyler fitting into one of those cages one time. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, was it all three of us? I think I might have just. I remember being. That was my first mental monument. I used to be so scared to go on the zipper.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I thought we squeezed in one time, the three of us.
Did we? We might have. Yeah, we probably did. We were pretty small back in the day.
Yeah.
What? You have a little handy dandy notebook that I saw that you have some notes on.
We got.
Yeah, look at that. What kind of information do you have for us today?
I got 3 Minnesota Vikings training camp things to watch.
Oh, nice.
And just wrote up some little information on our Minnesota Timberwolves 2 draft picks last night.
Wow. Yeah, where do you want to start? I was shocked by the Timberwolves draft last night.
Sure, let's start there. Shocked and odd. We had a volleyball game, so I was not paying attention to the draft.
Did you win the volleyball game?
We did, yes.
Okay.
Against
Hollywood?
Yep, against the old Burns clan. Devin Burns and family.
Okay.
So, sorry to your sister's family.
It's okay. I got no personal connection to them. Go ahead.
Classic. But then all of a sudden, I'm driving home and I see Minnesota Timberwolves have traded for the 8th pick.
Ooh.
Yeah,
it's a big trade.
From.
Well, after I saw the trade, it's hard not to get excited about it. And this is my first takeaway from the trade is that the Timberwolves traded a 2031 unprotected first-round pick.
Yeah.
Which is 7 years down the road. And I think they traded like a 2030 first-round pick, too.
The 30's a swap. So like if
the 30's a swap.
So
okay,
if the Spurs are worse than us, they'll keep it. And if obviously they'll swap if we're better or whatever. Or we're worse.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So my first thought is, why didn't the San Antonio Spurs want this guy? And why were they willing to take 2 draft picks 6 and 7 years later when most likely Greg Popovich probably isn't even coaching the team at that point in time? Tim Connolly, Chris Finch, they're probably not even on the Minnesota Timberwolves organization, which I understand why they wanted to trade those picks because they got no connection to that. They're not going to be here in 8 years. They're going to be fired or go somewhere else. So I just don't understand why, from the Spurs' perspective, unless they did not like this player, why they made this deal.
Yeah, I quick listened to Simmons and Russillo talk about it for a little bit, and they were just kind of saying that the draft capital is just worth it when they're still kind of building. If you're the Spurs, and if you figure 7 years from now, they hopefully will have Victor Wembanyama, so hopefully they'll be good. So having an additional pick in the future when they're going to be a good team, it doesn't hurt. If the Wolves, who knows what's going to happen with the Wolves? Well, really, who knows what's going to happen with anybody? But you know what? This is kind of how I view it. First of all, the Wolves had 2 available picks to trade. They could trade this year's first and then the 2031 first. That was it. Every other pick is accounted for already,
right?
Which is kind of funny. But anytime you have a chance to trade for a top 10 pick and all you're trading is a 6th grader, I feel like you got to do that deal. I've seen 6th grader. Well, 2031 pick. Yeah, would be about a 6th grader right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I've seen 6th graders at recess, and it's as a teacher, and I would trade a lot of those kids for Rob Dillingham.
What are you seeing on the playground? What are you seeing from 6th graders hooping it up? Give us some insight on that one.
Yeah, so they're short, on the short side, a little short for the NBA. Probably a little slow. A little weak compared to NBA prospects.
Litchfield, right? This is not nationally.
Well, I feel like I can kind of surmise that it might be nationally. Although there's usually by sixth grade, you get some guys who are like already almost 6 feet and they're just built like a tank. Like around, I mean, just not in Litchfield necessarily, but just like, sixth graders exist that you look at them, you're like, that's a man. But
right, yeah,
yeah. So anyway, I just thought it's funny just to really think about that. Yeah, the Wolves are trading away, for a kid who's 11 years old right now.
Right. That's an interesting thought. Yeah. So they're giving away their first round picks in the future for this Rob guy.
Yeah.
And apparently this guy can create shots and help the Timberwolves offensively immensely is what I've been reading, what I've been seeing from the big time reporters like John Krasinski and Dane Moore and guys like that. Which I think is the Timberwolves had to really look at themselves hard in the mirror and say, you know what? Karl Anthony Towns is not a shot creator for himself. Yeah. Anthony Edwards needs another shot creator offensively, and they went and got him. So I credit the Timberwolves for doing it from that perspective.
I shouldn't say the number one, but more than likely the number one reason that they did this, aside from obviously they must like Rob Billingham, it's hard not to. 15 points a game in the SEC. What's weird is he was the sixth man. It's always crazy. Like, he was the sixth man for Kentucky.
I did not know that.
Yeah. But it was 15 points a game, 48% from the field, 44% from three on almost 5 attempts a game. So, like,
That's pretty good.
A legit shooter. Yep. 4 assists a game, can pass the ball a little bit. But the main reason is because the Wolves are so tax stuck with their luxury cap, right? Their luxury tax. They're going to be over the aprons. They're flirting with that second apron, which mainly means the Wolves are going to owe a lot of money to the rest of the league, which is not a big deal. But the reason it's a big deal is because it limits the trades you can make. It limits the players you can sign and all this. There's a lot of details to it, not worth getting into. But the point being, as long as we have Gobert, Ant, and Towns, and really Jaden McDaniels too, they're going to be stuck around that cap line. And so we're not going to be able to just go and sign guys for the next, potentially 4 or 5 years, whatever it ends up being. So the fact that we could trade up and get a guy, draft a guy that keeps you under that limit, it's adding talent, in this case, young talent, young scoring without having to push yourself higher up in the apron, and then without having to, like I said, with free agency, they wouldn't have the flexibility to do that. So I think that's the main reason is they saw a guy they liked. They knew they could draft him and then keep him for the next 5 years with that restricted, tag, right? Rookie contract into that restricted deal, restricted free agency deal. So I think that's the biggest reason, aside from obviously they like him. It's that for the cap and for their team construction, it's one of the only ways they can really add talent. And then obviously next year they don't have a first round pick, and they just have to plan really smartly to build around Ant for the next 5 years, essentially, because they don't have the picks, they don't have the cap flexibility and all these different things. So they got to be really smart. This was a smart way to do it.
It'll be fascinating to see the after effects of this trade because of what you just said. And I read yesterday that there's mutual interest between Kyle Anderson and the Timberwolves in agreeing to a new deal to come back for another year or two or whatever, however that looks. But because of that second apron, because of the situation that you just laid out for us and for me and for everybody listening and watching, that might be a guy that hits the road, right? Like Timberwolves might not be able to bring him back because the dollar amounts are just going to look differently. Kyle Anderson might be able to get $7 million a year from the Houston Rockets, and the Timberwolves would only be willing to pay him $2.5–3 million a year here in Minnesota. Well, that makes a pretty easy decision for Kyle Anderson. And, same thing for a Jordan McLaughlin on a smaller scale. Maybe it could get $3 million from San Antonio and the Timberwolves could only pay him $900,000 a year. Well,
the minimum,
and he's gone too. So I think from everything that you just said, it makes complete sense to try to get a guy that's good on a rookie contract, just like it is in any sport. You think about the NFL, when you pay a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, you got to find cornerbacks, offensive linemen, wide receivers that are on rookie deals that you can have on your roster for 4 years and that they can play and that they can contribute while you're only paying them a very minimum salary so that you can spread out the wealth and the greatness of your team.
Yep, absolutely. And it seems like he is a guy who will step in and play, not necessarily obviously starting, because you'd assume we bring back the same starting five. But he's definitely going to be a bench pop, a bench scorer that can create and lead that second unit. I don't know if he'll be a true, a one really coming off the bench. That'll be something to see. It seems like he has some of the skills to do it, but it just depends what you're looking for. Sounds like his defense isn't ideal, but when you got Alexander Walker and Gobert and McDaniels, like, he'll be fine, and even Anthony Edwards is pretty good on defense too. Like, he's not going to have to lock anybody up. He can guard the worst of the two guards and whatever. Like, he'll figure it out. He'll be fine.
And is it Mike Conley's succession plan? Is that how you say that word?
Yeah. No.
So
It
when
could,
he
right,
retires
could be. Yep.
in 2 years or whatever, I mean, he's got a year or two left on his contract after they extended him this year.
Yeah.
Well, then he steps right into that role unless he's like the Manu Ginobili 6-man off the bench guy for his entire career.
Yep. And the other one that actually might be just as interesting is that Terrence Shannon, the Illinois guy.
Yeah.
Usually 27th overall picks aren't, interesting for the most part.
Yeah, they did a really good report on that. I saw that pick. I didn't see the 8th pick, but they did a good report on his situation and why he fell that far and how he basically turned a chapter onto his life after getting accused of something that he didn't do, allegedly, and then he was able to get off of it in court.
Yep. Yeah, right. Went through the whole legal process and that was, acquitted. So, right, in the court of law, nothing happened. Obviously, who knows? But that's the way it went down. And Billis was talking. I don't know if you saw that part too, where he was talking, but he said the best scorer in the draft, which again, the Wolves half court got pretty stagnant, right? You don't have a lot of creators, right? Alexander Walker doesn't create. Conley creates for others a little bit, obviously, but like, it's getting harder for him. And creates his own shot. But then you got McDaniels and Towns and Gobert who all need help. Shannon's a guy, 23 points a game, again, a 37% three-point shooter on 6 to 7 attempts a game. You got a guy who can score a lot, score in the half court. I think both of those guys have a good chance of actually playing, which doesn't always happen.
And I love his age. I don't think there's enough talked about age in the NBA draft, especially as you get later on in the draft, because early on, if there's a top 10 guy that you think can be a superstar that's only 17, 18 years old, okay, go ahead and snag him, a freshman out of college.
Yep.
But if there's a guy that's ready to play, potentially has his man body, can step into the league and be a role player like this Terrence guy that the Timberwolves drafted, then go ahead and get him, because the likelihood that this 18-year-old player that's drafted 30th, 27th, 46th overall, that's going to make that player's going to make an impact is very, very minimal. And I think putting your bet on a guy that's already has developed enough to play is the right call.
Yeah, right. You said it's a balance, right? Dillingham, I think, is 19. He just turned 19 or something like that. That's more of a project. That's more of a longer term, right? Your Ant Edwards, you're those kind of guys that are like the special talents. But you're right that if you need a guy for the next 4 years to just be a role player, having a 23-year-old with 5 years of college basketball experience at a high level, played for Texas Tech, I think it was, and then a couple years at Illinois. Again, they were good the whole time in his college career. He's playing in big games. He's matured. Like you said, he's got kind of his full man body, right? He's, probably can go up a little bit once you got an NBA team and in that whole regimen. But yeah, no, it's the kind of guy, right? If you're looking for an instant role player, right, you're much more likely to find it with a 22, 23, even 24-year-old guy than an 18 or 19-year-old project.
Right. I think about the guys like Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo. Some of these guys are guys that came out after several years at the University of Villanova, and they're great role players on the New York Knicks. I guess they both play for the Knicks, but that's what this Terrence guy could turn out to be.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Because he's already developed his body.
Yep. Absolutely.
But you got some Minnesota Vikings training camp notes.
Yep.
I want to hear your takeaways. Did you see that J.J. McCarthy was throwing passes to Adam Thielen? Did you see that?
I did see the video. It looked like, it was edited in a way you couldn't tell if any of the throws were any good.
I know. I hate those. It's like, okay, let's just make them look like superstars out here.
It was like rolling out.
Mixtape. Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, there was someone that I thought it was the funniest thing. There was a video, I saw this a couple weeks ago. It said, "Look at me make Laquan Treadwell into a superstar wide receiver." And I watched this video. It's like a minute long. It just shows Laquan Treadwell's probably all of his 7 catches in the NFL that he's ever had. And some of them are just like one-handed. He breaks a tackle, runs for a first down. It's like so funny how you could just make anything into something just off a few highlights.
Yeah, but it's definitely a bigger deal. I've seen tons of those with NBA guys, kind of like how you, me, and NBA Tony guy will just name random guys. I always see those tweets that are like, people don't realize how dirty Marvin Williams was. And it's like a Marvin Williams mixtape. And you're like, no, he was never great.
He was a decent role player. He wasn't good.
But they like Luke Ridnour. It's all these guys from just, the last 20 years that shouldn't have a mixtape, but they do. And it's always hilarious.
A Luke Ridnour mixtape would be the funniest thing ever. Pull up dribble with his left hand.
Yeah, that little,
he's fading away to his left.
Yeah.
But hey, speculation is Adam Thielen getting traded to the Minnesota Vikings?
He has probably just as high of a chance to win a Super Bowl, like you said with the Panthers.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Because that's what he said, right? Last year he said Panthers have a great chance to win the Super Bowl. It's about winning. It's about you win there.
So
I just want one guy to be honest and say it's not about the winning. This deal's about the money.
Right, but then he's just gonna get bashed.
I know you can't actually say that. I know,
but it's like I wish they would say that. It's like I wouldn't bash them. It's like go ahead, be honest about it. But then it's like, you got those hardcore football fans that trash jersey releases every single time they come out, and
But no, you're like, because I almost have, right. I'd have more respect if he just said, you know what, this deal's about the money. I'm getting older in my career. I don't know how many years I got left. If we win, great, but I'm just happy to have a bigger contract and, provide for my family versus like, I'm signing with the Panthers and I think Bryce Young can lead us to a Super Bowl. It's like, no one believes that. That's just such a lie.
It's such a lie. Yeah.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
Statement. Right. Yeah. That's a good one. maybe throw that on the soundboard.
I say there could be a lot of Seinfeldisms on there. That's for sure.
There could be. Yeah. So anyway, your Minnesota Vikings training camp notebook.
Okay. I got 3.
Okay.
We'll go least obvious to most obvious.
Okay.
Number 1 is the kicker one.
Yeah. Big one.
I think that's kind of interesting because I feel like we never have been happy with our
underrated.
Kicker. And we got John Parker-Romo, the USFL guy. I think that's where he came from, right?
Can't deny him, yeah.
With an absolute boot. And that Will Riker, the Alabama guy. Which way are you leaning?
Alabama guy for sure.
Yeah, he's been there, done that. I always like that about a kicker.
And I've read some reports, and basically it sounds like John David Booty's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Remember him?
I do remember him, yeah.
Wasn't he a USC quarterback that we had as a third stringer for a couple of years?
Yeah.
John David Booty was pretty good. But I think based on what I've seen is that the Alabama guy has the front door open and is ready to snag that roster spot. And I can't deny this. What does front door open mean? I don't know.
Has the what you're trying to say? Has the leg up? Maybe would be a
leg up. Got the leg up on John David Booty.
Yeah.
So what's his name? John Parker-Romo. Is that what his real name is? But anyway, He went to Alabama. The Vikings invested a 6th-round pick into him. He's definitely going to make the roster. And I think it's a way bigger move than people are discussing. I think it feels a massive need. I mean, in the Super Bowl last year, we saw 2 Super Bowl records be made in like a quarter. Like, there's a 55-yard field goal, which was a Super Bowl record, and then there's like a 58-yard field goal, which was a Super Bowl record.
Yep.
It's like when you have Sam Darnold as your quarterback, and I think he'll perform well this year, but you still need all the points that you can get. Even if Tom Brady's your quarterback, you need all the points that you can get, because NFL games are that close.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, right. We're gonna have less margin for error, with what we got. Yeah. So it's just, and anytime you have a kicker, like I said, who's been there and done that, he's kicked kicks in the highest of high stages, right, for the last 4 years. Like, I like that about a kicker. He's cool, calm, and collected. Got a good leg, and as he's 22 or whatever he is, 23. Like, he's, versus that other guy, John David Booty. I think he's like 26, turning 27 already. Not that that's a huge deal, but it's kind of nice to have a guy that you drafted under contract that's younger. And hope
he's kicking. John David Booty is kicking so that he can get eyes on from a different team, right? So during the preseason, he hopefully can get a shot or two, or training camp. Hopefully there's other teams that are scouting or looking at his tape or whatever, and he can do something so that another team whose kicker sucks after week 3 can sign him, and then they can pull a Daniel Carlson on the Minnesota Vikings.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Now, an underrated one. So that one I think is crazy. An underrated one. Who is our wide receiver 3? Is it Powell? Brandon Powell. Is it Jalen Naylor? I think it's
Jalen Naylor.
Add Naylor. It's like, I'm pretty sure it's Jalen.
Or Jalen Noel, something like that. It's either Jalen Noel
it's Naylor
or
for sure. I got that. Yeah. Is that the Bulls guy? Like,
the former Timberwolf great Jalen Noel. Yeah.
Or is wide receiver 3 Anthony Edwards?
Oh, I'm intrigued. Anthony Edwards played college basketball, but was a very successful high school football player, which I think brings up another conversation that I had. I don't know if you saw this one or not, but I shared a take on which sport would transition to the other sport the best. And I think NBA players like LeBron, Giannis, Anthony Edwards, I think they transition best to the NFL as wide receivers than like a pitcher does to football, than a football player does to basketball, than like a hockey player does to any other sport. I think the NBA 6'6" player, LeBron, Edwards, whatever, transitions best to an NFL receiver, NFL tight end, something like that.
They probably have the best shot because I don't say it requires the least amount of skill, but it's more about athleticism than it is about skill, right? If you dropped, basketball is so much about can you dribble and shoot. Well, you can't just drop Justin Jefferson on a basketball court. He's not going to just be able to shoot. Maybe, and obviously there's guys who did. There's there's a Tony Gonzalez. No, Antonio Gates, right? He played
Antonio Gates.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. D1 basketball and then switched over to playing football or did both or whatever. But yeah, so I mean, there's guys who can do it, but for the most part, I think you're right that going to the NBA, it's like if you can't shoot and dribble, like you're not going to be able to play in the NBA. Whereas switching to a receiver, tight end, it's more about your quickness and athleticism, and then you assume most of those guys can probably catch a football at a good rate. So I think you're right there. So, because Anthony Edwards, at 6'4", 6'5", and his speed and athleticism, not crazy.
I'm not. I wouldn't be against it.
Yeah.
I would say the Vikings hope it would be Jalen Naylor, but he's always hurt.
He has been.
So I'm going to say Brandon Powell is the leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And I think he gives the Minnesota Vikings a good underneath option. I think he performed well last year. I like Brandon Powell. So I think Brandon Powell's my leader in the clubhouse at wide receiver 3.
I would agree. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried. No, they don't have a lot of flexibility. But if they tried to find somebody else, whether it's maybe after the cuts. I mean, there's a handful of teams that have a whole bunch of receivers, and they're just going to kind of take their pick and cut some guys and stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if honestly, like, I guess I'd have to look at Adam Thielen's cap number, but a guy like that too, or also in the Panthers are like,
I can't do it. Yeah,
let's cut him and whatever. And there's going to be some options probably out there. I doubt Adam Thielen actually will, but just guys like that though that end up on the waiver wire and are just looking to be a third or fourth receiver kind of guy. So I could see them doing that route, but otherwise, I think
Rudy
Powell's
Gobert?
Rudy Gobert.
The worst hands in the NBA. Let's throw him at the wide receiver position.
Maybe next week we'll do an 11-man offense of all Timberwolves.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
Yeah, Pekovic.
Pekovic. I was gonna say he'd be the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Stanley Roberts.
Rasho
Nastarovich. Stanley Roberts could be like the William Perry running back if you wanted him to be.
I mean, you need Edwards. I don't know who your quarterback would be.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Who would be the quarterback?
Wally Zerbiak?
Yeah, Wally could be a quarterback. Huh.
Johnny Flynn, because he's such a good passer.
Kevin Love.
Yep, Kevin Love.
A lot of down. And I mean, he's a bigger guy, but Josh Allen's a bigger guy. And you think about the passes that he threw the outlet passes down the court. I'd say Kevin Love might be the best option at quarterback.
That's probably a good idea. I'm trying to think of other. Craig the Rhino Smith probably as a guard.
Yeah, or a fullback.
Yeah, that's you don't want the Rhino going through the lead back. The hole. Right. I'm not making that tackle.
Think about the defenders shaking in their boots on that one. I mean, they're gonna be running out of the way.
That's true.
Any other Viking storylines? You got 3, you said?
Yeah, I mean the other one's the most obvious. Is it Darnold or J.J.? And if it's Darnold, when does the switch happen?
I think the switch happens.
What is your
late in the year at best? But J.J. McCarthy, it seems like they're preparing him to start year 2 or year 3. If Sam Darnold goes out and has a good year, and the Minnesota Vikings are like, should we resign him now? Like, if he goes out and performs really well through the first 9 weeks of the year, and the writing's on the wall, and they don't feel like J.J. McCarthy is ready yet. So if he performs well in the first 9 weeks of the year, well, then after the year, he's a free agent. Another team's going to come calling.
Right.
And are the Minnesota Vikings going to be like, maybe we should extend him now because we just don't know if McCarthy's going to be ready in that next year. And Sam Darnold's a good backup for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I think I can't. I don't know what I can't imagine. Darnold would have to play pretty darn well, I think, for JJ to for sure not be the starter next year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be pretty crazy. I think that even if Darnold plays pretty well, I think you're right that they would be more than willing to let him walk and just switch to JJ. It's just kind of the way it works, right? When you have a top 10 pick like that, or whatever, with 10,
10, yeah.
You can't wait too long. And I know it's optics or whatever, and Darnold, but you just couldn't have him wait 2 to 3 years, I don't think, and have people be happy with you. And that doesn't always matter. But I would contend potentially that week after our bye, I could see a JJ switch. I think you're right.
Wow.
I think Darnold's probably the starter. I think there's more, more likely it's for sure week 1. But I don't think
it's close.
Yeah, first 5 weeks though. So at New York Giants, probably an easier-ish one, but it's week 1. They're going to be up for it. Everybody thinks they have a chance at the Super Bowl, right? Everyone's got the fresh right in their minds.
Yeah, just wait till after week 2, and everyone's 0-2, and their season's over.
Yeah. So that one I would maybe chalk up as a win. And they don't know for sure if it'll be Daniel Jones or Drew Lock.
It's a 50-50.
But it's right. You're on the road, and like I said, at week 1, they're going to be amped.
I don't think it's favorable or formidable. I think that's a 50-50 game.
Agreed, 50-50. If we're playing early formidable 50-50 or favorable, that would be 50-50. Versus San Fran.
Favorable, obviously.
That's a tough one.
Sam Darnold revenge game. Versus Houston, which I also would put as formidable. Yeah, 1 and 2.
Yeah, 1 and 2 if you're right, if you're hopeful. At Green Bay.
1 and 3.
Yeah. And then in London we play the Jets.
You don't really know what the Jets are going to look like.
The Jets are right. That could be easy. It could be difficult. They could be, the Jets, depends what Rodgers does, whatever. But either way, you're going to London to play a team that's should be decent. And then it's the bye week. So there's a very
5 weeks of the season, man. That's
very
tough.
realistic chance you could be 0-5, 1-4.
It's looking shaky.
Even if you play well, too. I mean, that's the unfortunate part, right? There's just between San Fran, Houston, and Green Bay, those are 3 legitimate playoff teams.
I can't wait till after week 1 and the Timberwolves. Huh? And the Vikings win. And the teammates after the games, we just believe in each other. We just have confidence in one another. We have confidence in Sam Darnold. We just know that we're going to go out there and win games. Then they lose 4 in a row going into the bye week. Then they're 1-4, and then they ask him the same question. Yeah, it's got to go with the nose, the grindstone. Just got to keep working.
Yeah. But all that is to say, if they start out 1-4, let's say, and Darnold is playing, because it's going to be difficult. Granted, again, to be fair with those teams that we're playing, because the Jets, part of it, the Jets defense, we know that's going to be legit. Whether the offense is good or not, we know. San Fran's got a great defense. Green Bay was pretty good. The Jets were elite, and then Houston's got Danielle Hunter revenge game. We play some pretty good defenses. So regardless, it's going to be difficult for Darnold to play well, even if he's quote unquote playing well. So I could just see, hey, we're 1-4. The season's already kind of lost anyway. How many 1-4 teams rally to make the playoffs?
That's true.
Give JJ the bye week to prepare, and then let's just go with it. Because again, we're going to let Darnold walk anyway.
Week 7 versus the Lions at home. Is that a favorable situation for J.J. McCarthy?
It's a home game at least. I mean,
right.
And it's against the Lions, who you're probably banking on. Hey, it's going to have to be like 35-28. The Lions score in bunches, and they give up points usually in bunches. So it'd be as favorable as you're probably going to get.
Right. Yeah. And then they play the Rams after that, which is probably a 50-50 game. And the Colts, you might have something here with this J.J. McCarthy's team, because the schedule lightens up a little bit after the bye week with the Lions, the Rams, Colts, Jaguars, Titans, Bears, Cardinals. It's like those are if you're going to try to give a rookie quarterback some confidence. Or do the Minnesota Vikings go with, the first 5 weeks of the season were tough. We started 1-4, but now is the time when we can make a run with Sam Darnold. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the debate internally that the Minnesota Vikings are going to have to discuss.
Yep. When it's all hypothetical, right? If Darnold is playing well, and it's worth it that they're in the playoff race, they're just going to keep riding Darnold and let JJ start in 2025. It all depends on what happens. So anything we could talk about, like what's the plan? I mean, they probably have a tentative idea in their minds at the moment of like when they want JJ to start, but we're not going to know until things start to actually play out. How is JJ looking camp? How does Darnold look in camp? How is Darnold looking in actual games against legitimate teams and all that sort of stuff? So just fun to talk about. But
it is fun to talk about. Well, thank you for your headlines. Those were good.
Yeah, thanks.
I liked all 3 of them.
I think I do a little bit of prep for once.
I think my biggest headline is which prep for once. Like, come on, get out of here. We know you're up grinding at 2 o'clock with the moonlight shining down through your window. We get it. Yep. One of my biggest storylines is, can CJ Ham fulfill the role of beloved player that rarely touches the ball that the crowd loves? The John Coons of the world.
Mark Madsen.
The Mark Madsens of the world. Is CJ Ham that guy? Or do the Minnesota Vikings need to find someone else?
I mean, I feel like CJ Ham's loved.
Right. He's a fullback.
And he's a Minnesota guy, right? Duluth, is that where he's?
Yeah, I think so.
Somewhere in Duluth.
Yeah, he's a Duluth guy. I don't know where I was going with that. But
I don't think anybody has any controversial opinions on CJ Ham. I don't know if there's anybody like anti CJ Ham out there.
Yeah, but is he that big time
like galvanizing force? Yeah.
Right.
That's I don't know.
He touches the ball and it's like the crowd just goes crazy. It's like when John Kuhn touched the ball for the Green Bay Packers, you would have thought that the Beatles were walking through town.
Yeah. Ham might still be too good to get, it's not a sarcastic applause, but that over the top applause with of a bench guy. When like in a high school game when that end of bench guy makes a three and
hey, right here.
yeah,
Right,
yeah. It's that ruckus applause because we don't expect it to happen.
Yep.
Like, people expect CJ to be. I mean, CJ does some good things out there. So
were you taking a shot at me?
I wasn't, but as I was talking about it, I realized it kind of was a veiled shot.
Timmy time was a big deal, man.
Timmy time was a big deal. I was in the C squad. We were in the bench or on the crowd, I should say, our C squad, and we were always chanting for it.
Yeah, you guys were my favorite. You guys were my fan club.
Yep.
Yep.
We always wanted Timmy time. We still want Timmy time. I bet Caleb Fields right now is Timmy time.
Sure, he's going to the Sherwin-Williams marketing agency saying Timmy time, Tim.
Yep.
Come on, Caleb Fields. It's on you. This podcast success is on you.
Yep.
Can we get a little some from you?
Yeah, no kidding.
Can we get a little effort?
Yeah, I don't know if his effort is there.
Yeah, he's half-assing it.
Yeah,
that's for sure. And I can't take it anymore.
The best way to get more listeners is to rip one of the most loyal listeners.
I think it is actually, because then Caleb Fields has become a part of the pod. Is he
probably
real?
People out there who know the name Caleb Fields who have never met Caleb Fields.
Right, exactly. Is he real, or is he just an imaginative figure in our minds?
Yeah.
Was the Caleb Fields that we brought onto the podcast a while back the real Caleb Fields, or
was it just Casey?
Or is it Casey? Or is it just a big bit? It's just a big part of the bit.
Right. Is he the Carl Grubschmidt of the Minnesota Tim podcast?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. He might be. Unless he gets the Sherwin-Williams deal for us. I think he is.
I will say that was probably the question I got asked the most during the K-Fan days was, who is Carl Grubschmidt? Is Carl Grubschmidt real?
Page. I think there's a Wikipedia page on him.
Is there?
And actually shares who it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't spoil it just in case. Don't
do it. Yep. I think there's a Wikipedia page that reveals who actually is the voice of Carl Grubschmidt.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
The one I actually don't know over all the years that I was there, and maybe you do know, I don't know it. The Marty Wexler, the draft guy that Barrero always has on for the NFL draft. Have you heard that segment?
I know. I don't think I'm not familiar with that one.
So yeah, it's always like it's making fun of like data analytics essentially. So it's this guy Marty Wexler, and he does like all these. He's like an off the grid like prospect guy, and so he always makes up all these insane drills like we had him run away from alligators because it tests just like crap like that, right? Just like absurd things that are making fun of all the data.
Sure.
I've never been able to figure out who the voice is. And I never asked Guardsy, but I wanted to. So I thought maybe you'd have an insight.
I can text him. Him. That's your homework for next pod.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Anyway, Jacob, thank you as always for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your notes and your handy dandy notebook. And I appreciate your willingness to be a part of this podcast on Thursday mornings and consistently as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, listeners. Subscribe right there if you made it this far. And thank you for making this podcast a part of your day.